Throughout this conference, we've heard a lot from adult leaders, but sometimes our peers can teach us just as much, if not more, than the grown-ups. Our next speakers, Alvin Lee and Michelle Alas, have not only taught me what youth leadership looks like, but the vast impact a collection of students can have on the education system. As one of the founders of GENup, a national student-led education advocacy organization, Alvin has helped mobilize thousands of students nationwide to advocate for some of the most pivotal pieces of policy and legislation that have come before our elected officials. Michelle Alas is GENup's policy director, Mount Diablo Unified School District's first student board member, a position which she successfully petitioned for, and the chair of the Walnut Creek Youth Commission. Alvin and Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us, Zaid. We'll kick it off with some quick introductions. So hi all, it's great to be here. My name is Alvin Lee, and I'm going to be a rising freshman in college next year, and I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm going to pass it over to Michelle.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you. My name is Michelle. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a rising freshman at Brown University in the fall, and I am GENup's policy director.
And we're so excited to be here. So we're going to get right to it and show you a bit more about what GENup is about. To kick it off, I'm going to play a quick video. Okay, perfect.
Hi, my name is Sophia Andari. I am a founding member and co-chair of Women's March San Francisco, a commission on the status of women for the city and county of San Francisco, and a member of GENup's Board of Advisors.
Hello, my name is Jessica Riestra, and I am the former director for March for Our Lives California and the current director of external affairs for GENup.
GENup is a student-led advocacy organization focused on making changes in the education system. Across California, there are over 50 plus chapters made up of passionate students, all unified under the common goal of making both local and statewide changes in education. GENup offers a platform for students, regardless of their past experiences as advocates and leaders, to become activists. Any and all students are welcome to be a part of GENup. No prior leadership experience required.
Some of GENup's past and current initiatives include the Schools and Community First campaign, which is working to secure over $12 billion for Californian schools and communities programs. Secondly, the California Student Board Member Association, which is an independent association of student board members from across California. Thirdly, the Students for Education Equity Coalition, which is a statewide effort of more than 100 student orgs, student leaders, and adult leaders coming together to ensure that educational funding is preserved during the COVID pandemic. And lastly, the Student Together webinar series, which is a chapter-led project using webinars as a means to ensure student activism in our educational system during COVID. GENup partners with many notable organizations, such as March for Our Lives California, Women's March, Future Coalition, and many other influential organizations to create change in our educational system. Any students interested in being a change maker can join GENup to gain a platform built for magnifying their voices and creating meaningful changes. Join more than 2,000 student leaders from all around California today.
All right. Thank you everyone so much for listening. We're now going to hop into the presentation portion of our presentation today. So once again, really excited to be here. You might have heard about GENup and some of our work through various advocacy circles y'all have been involved in. We worked very closely with Zaid, our wonderful host this year, in his capacity as state student board member on a lot of exciting initiatives, and our Associate Director of Operations, Rana, was recently appointed as the new state student board member for next year, so that's really exciting as well. But on a further note, we're going to get right to it. So these are our Instagram handles and our Facebook. You can shoot us a quick follow if you want right now, if y'all are in front of your phones, at genup.us, or you can check up our website at www.generationup.net. So let's get right to it. I hope everyone gets excited for a fun-filled day. So to join GENup, you can visit tinyurl.com/genupjoin. We'll be sending the link to the Zoom chat as well later on in the presentation. So what is GENup? We are a youth-led, youth-organized coalition of students really coming together to seek sustained education reform and the empowerment of student voices. So at least here in California, our model of advocacy and change really comes down to a two-pronged approach. So first one, for concrete policy reform, we really achieve this by working closely with student board members and district board of education trustees. I'm sure in the past conference, in the last couple of days, you have been all hearing a lot from various student board members. Student board member empowerment and working very closely with student board members is a really critical pillar of how we go about making our change. The second piece is grassroots advocacy. And so that's really achieved through local community outreach, organizing, and partnerships with other youth organizations and adult allies. So GENup chapters, which at least here in California are delineated by school districts. And these really sort of serve as grassroots organizations in their respective districts. And the idea is that the GENup chapter, which can organize a larger swath of the student body in said district, can work directly with the student board member, which is this perfect liaison between the chapter and the Board of Education to kind of create concrete policy change. And we're going to show examples of some of that later. So I'm going to pass it over now to Michelle.
Hi, everybody. So now that Alvin has gone over really what GENup is, let me tell you a little bit about our vision and what we want you all to play a part in. So essentially, what we want at GENup is to make education advocacy as easy and possible for students as possible. We envision GENup as a vehicle to create long-lasting change in our education system. And this means tangible change. So whether it be introducing a board policy at one of your school district board meetings, or maybe even introducing a piece of legislation in the California legislature, we want to make sure that education advocacy, that policy change is possible for everyone. Right now, there isn't really a structure for student leadership, and equity often blocks out student voice and prevents any sort of reform. What we want to do is make sure that our chapters spearhead educational reform for any student, regardless of your socioeconomic status, race, gender, or any other factors. Anyone can be an advocate for change, and anyone can become an advocate on their local school board. We want to lead a cultural shift in student activism and representation, and that's something that you can be a part of.
So this is a quick rundown of what our membership looks like. We have chapters in over 53 high school districts and colleges across California. So if you're going to be a rising freshman, particularly at a CSU, a community college, or even UC in California next year, we do have chapters at this level, and we do collegiate advocacy work at a higher ed level too. So we have 100 plus chapters across California, which includes some of the largest and most diverse school districts like LA Unified, San Diego Unified, SFUSD, Oakland Unified, Fresno, etc. And we have student organizers from across the state that spans nearly over 250 plus high schools and over 4,000 plus student members and student organizers in our network across the nation. I'm going to pass over to Michelle now.
One of the really unique things about GENup is that we are based in school districts. We're based locally. So if you go to a public school in a school district, odds are that you have a GENup chapter, and you should definitely join it. Our chapter development strategy aims to connect students locally within their school district and within school districts around their area, but also with peers across California. Our chapters are different from other organizations because you learn how to independently manage your chapter, how to plan initiatives, how to interview possible candidates for school board, how to lobby state legislators, and our members successfully develop those legislative skills and partner with their elected officials. As I said before, we want to spark cultural shifts. So our unique model of advocacy provides students that platform so that you can advocate at your school board meetings. And we provide that framework to make that local policy change. And that's all because of our school district-based chapter development strategy.
Diversity is also a very central tenet of GENup's mission of empowering youth to participate in ed advocacy as well. So we really strive to ensure that every school has the opportunity to access our ed initiatives and take action to advocate for their ideas. And so a couple ways we do that is we have a lot of GENup caucuses that members can participate in that represent specific groups. And these groups go about, and these specific caucuses go about doing their own advocacy as well. And they take positions on different bills and they lead some of their own initiatives. So for example, our GENup Women's Caucus does a lot of work in terms of female empowerment in the ed space, and they run a little podcast as well as a magazine. We also have a GENup Education Committee mentorship programs where we partner youth with executive team members and GENup's network of student leaders, particularly adult allies and members of our network that were currently very engaged student leaders in high school that are now in college to really learn more hands-on experiences and create and shape their own political network. We're now going to go into some of the different initiatives that we've been working on. We're going to first kick it off with schools and communities first. So this was our first major initiative, and we led the charge back in 2020 to really increase public school funding. A lot of you might have known about this as Prop 15. We also did work around SFEE, where we brought together a lot of student board members from across California, youth-led organization, to fight to make sure the education budget was not cut. Some other really quick initiatives that we've done is the State Seal of Civic Engagement, ethnic studies, where we led the charge to pass an ethnic studies mandate in California. This year it was reintroduced as AB 101, so you might have heard us around that, and we've been leading the work around that. We also introduced and wrote our own bill, AB 824, into the California legislature this year that would allow you to petition and create student board member positions on county boards of education, and this recently passed the Assembly Ed Committee. Some last couple of things before we move on to Q&A. Is we also led the Civic Engagement Pledge, and this was in collaboration with the California Department of Education and our Secretary of State, Shirley Weber. We had a huge kickoff with it a couple weeks ago, and this is a pledge that we're hoping districts across California can opt into, and this sort of feeds off the State Seal of Civic Engagement. Our policy director here today, Michelle, was actually on the working group that actually helped create the state seal that now students across California can access. The last little thing is a lot of our chapters do engage in localized advocacy as well. And so, for example, our GENup Fremont chapter has done a lot of tangible and successive work. Recently, they were able to get a bunch of mental health victories in the latest school budget. And so now my school district is going to have mental health wellness centers, virtual wellness centers, cultural competency training for teachers, peer-to-peer conflict resolution training for students, and a whole host of things, mental literacy curriculum, and all of this came about through our GENup Fremont chapter's local advocacy work in collaboration with our student board members. So now we're going to move on to the Q&A section.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for that presentation. I hear you guys pitch it a lot because we're friends, first of all, but also because we're in a lot of the same groups. And I think that that time especially was perfect. But with that being said, we have very little time to have a Q&A. And so the first question kind of goes out to you guys. First for Alvin, kind of what got you interested in starting GENup? And then Michelle, why did you end up joining GENup?
Yeah, it's a story. So I got involved in ed advocacy when I was still in about 7th grade, and it's because of a personal experience that actually got me to speak at my first school board meeting then, and kind of after that, that's when I started really getting more engaged in ed advocacy work. So I remember sort of in 8th and 9th grade, sometimes I would be the only student coming to speak at school board meetings. And around that time, I also started getting more involved in sort of community organizing, community advocacy. And about in sort of 9th to 10th grade, I was brought to a union organizing conference at the Berkeley Public Library. And there I actually met a great student leader. Her name was Lauren, and she was a student organizer and student leader that did a lot of advocacy work in OUSD, Oakland Unified. And so at the time we sort of connected, this was when the Schools and Communities First Prop 15 ballot initiative was still really getting off the ground. And so she and I linked up and we sort of talked about our experiences and how there's just a lack of student engagement in this space and youth leadership. Sort of out of that came GENup, and initially we brought on a couple of our friends and students, and we sort of really grew there. And fortunately enough, we were able to get to the size we are today. Michelle.
The reason why I joined GENup is because access to equitable education has been a passion of mine since I started realizing that in my own school district, we have a very large socioeconomic divide. So you have a school that's at one end at the socioeconomic spectrum with very active PTAs and Chromebooks for every student. And then you have schools on the other end that have more English language learner students, more low income students, and just don't have the same resources that's available to another high school and another middle school in that same school district. And I actually moved to the United States when I was a baby. My parents moved me here because of my education and for the opportunities and schools available in California. But I started realizing from a young age that there were other students that just did not have the same opportunities that I did. So particularly those vulnerable demographics, unduplicated pupils, English language learners, right? So these are the populations that I wanted to advocate for. And these are the issues that we wanted to focus on: the digital divide, right? Ethnic studies. We want to make education as equitable as possible for all students. And that's what GENup does. GENup has tangible policy. GENup has legislation in action moving through the legislature that does exactly this: elevate student voice and makes California education as equitable as possible.
Awesome. Well, Alvin, Michelle, we have so many questions for you, but unfortunately so little time. And so that was the last question that we could do, but it's been so awesome to get to see you guys and to be able to have this conversation and to learn more about GENup. Thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank
Bye,
you for
everyone.
having us.